Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Friday, April 24th, 2026 at 1:05 in the afternoon. So we're back to finish up our walkthrough of S71. Council, say
All right, good afternoon.
good afternoon.
Rick Sagel with the Office of Legislative Counsel. And we're going to continue, as the chair said, the walkthrough of S71 draft 2.3. If you were watching earlier, I skipped over 2415A, which is the definitions. And I explained why, but now I will get back to the definitions of the bill, which again are important based on how the bill has requirements of controllers, processes, and others. Okay, so I'm on subsection B, definitions. The definition of affiliate is fairly standard. It's a legal entity that shares common branding with another legal entity or is controlled by another legal entity. And then we define control as used in that sentence. It means ownership of or the power to vote more than 50% of the outstanding shares of any class of voting security of the company. Control in any manner over the election of a majority of directors or of individuals exercising similar functions, or the power to exercise control and influence over the management of the company. Authenticate means to use reasonable means to determine that a request to exercise any of the rights afforded under subdivisions 2415A1 through 5 is being made by or on behalf of a consumer who is entitled to exercise rights. So if you go back, those are the consumer have the right to delete data, et cetera. It does not include 6, which is opt out. So authenticate includes confirming whether or not controller is processing their data, correcting inaccuracies in their data, delete personal data, obtaining a copy of the consumer's personal data, obtaining a list of the third parties to which the controller has sold their data. That has the authentication piece. And the opt-out is not an authentication piece. Okay. Biometric data. Yeah, sorry.
Not getting into the policy, but why wouldn't the authentication apply to a consumer that's seeking document? I mean, not just technical.
So it would be a policy decision.
okay.
I'm not aware of a logistical reason, and witnesses may be able to help you with that.
Okay.
It's a question, yeah. Why is that one not included?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, biometric data. 3A means data generated from the technological processing of an individual's unique biological, physical, or physiological characteristics that allow or confirm the unique identification of the consumer, including iris, retina scans, fingerprints, facial or hand mapping, gait patterns, voice prints or vocal biomarkers, gait, or personally identifying physical movements or patterns. It does not include a digital or physical photograph, an audio or video recording, or any data generated from those two things unless such data is generated to identify a specific individual. Business associate is used under the HIPAA terminology. Child has the same meaning as in COPA. Collect means buying, renting, gathering, obtaining, receiving, or accessing any personal data by any means. This includes receiving data from the consumer, either actively or passively, or by observing the consumer's behavior. Consent means a clear affirmative act signifying a consumer's freely given, specific, informed, and unambiguous agreement to allow the processing of personal data related to the consumer.
So and when it talks about specific, can't remember we went through the substantive provision around. Did that give some clarity about what specific meant? In other words, I can imagine, categories versus, more detailed.
I wouldn't, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
I'm, it may be a relevant question. I'm wondering if it's just meant to be overly inclusive of how a consumer can get consent.
Okay.
But it's a good point. We may want to check back
Yeah,
with the actual,
right,
right. What's the word, the
Yeah.
part of the bill where that's used, parts of the bill that's used. But it is an important word. I mean, the consumer must give specific, unambiguous. These all seem kind of similar, to a lot of the processing.
yeah,
So maybe we should see words used in the
Yeah.
bill.
okay,
Consent may include a written statement, including by electronic means or by any other unambiguous affirmative action. Consent does not include acceptance of a general or broad terms of use or similar document that contains descriptions of personal data. So that's one thing, right? That's what we use specific maybe, is because it does not include these general terms of use. It does not include hovering over, muting, pausing, or closing a given piece of content.
Okay.
Does not include an agreement obtaining the use of a dark pattern, which I'm pretty sure we have defined. Yes, we'll get to that. A consumer is an individual who is a state resident. It does not include an individual acting in a commercial or employment context, or as an employee, owner, director, officer, or contractor of the company, or government agency whose communications or transactions with the controller occur solely within the context of the individual's role with the company, partnership, sole proprietorship, nonprofit, or government agency. Consumer health data is
okay, so, right,
Consumer health data is data that a controller uses to identify a consumer's physical or mental health condition or diagnosis. And that includes or status, and includes gender affirming health data and reproductive or sexual health data. Consumer health data controller is a controller that determines the means and purposes of processing consumer health data. A consumer reporting agency has the same meaning as is in the Fair Credit Reporting Act and federal law. Contextual advertising or an advertisement, contextual advertisement, means displaying or presenting an advertisement that does not vary based on the identity of the individual recipient and is based solely on the immediate content of a web page or online service within which the advertisement appears, or a specific request of the consumer for information or feedback. Continuing, a controller may use the following types of information to display a contextual advertisement. One, technical specifications as are necessary for the ad to be delivered and displayed properly on a given device. A consumer's immediate presence in a geographic area with a radius not smaller than 10 miles, or an area reasonably estimated to include online activity from at least 5,000 users, but not including precise geolocation data. And the consumer's language preferences. C, a controller using information pursuant to B, that we just went over, to display a contextual ad shall not use that information to make inferences about a consumer, profile consumer, or for any other purpose. And the controller shall not prohibit a consumer from using technical means to obfuscate or change a consumer's physical location to specify a language preference. Okay, controller means a person who, alone or jointly with others, determines the purpose and means of processing personal data. COPA is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. Covered entity has the same meaning as in HIPAA. Typically, a covered entity has to comply with HIPAA. Credit union has the same meaning as in Vermont law. A dark pattern means a user interface designed or manipulated with the substantial effect of subverting or impairing the economy, decision making, or choice, and includes the FTC refers to as a dark pattern. Decisions that produce legal or similarly significant effects concerning the consumer, that is a definition, means any decision made by the controller or on behalf of the controller that results in the provision or denial by the controller of any financial or lending service, any housing, any insurance, any education, enrollment, or opportunity, any criminal justice, any employment opportunity, or any healthcare services. De-identified data means data that does not identify and cannot reasonably be used to infer information about or otherwise be linked to an identified or identifiable individual or a device linked to the individual if the controller that possesses the data takes reasonable measures to ensure that the data cannot be used to re-identify an identified or identifiable individual or it be associated with an individual or device that identifies or is linked or reasonably linkable to an individual or household. And for purposes of this A, reasonable measures, which is used up above, includes the de-identification requirements set forth in federal law. That is a health information statute. B, talking again about de-identified data. The controller publicly commits to process the data only in a de-identified fashion and not attempt to re-identify the data. And contractually obligates any recipients of the data to comply with all provisions of the subchapter. Derived data means data that is created by the derivation. And that's how you say that? Of information, data, assumptions, correlation, inferences, predictions, or conclusions from facts, evidence, or another source of information or data about a consumer device. Financial institution, as used in the exemptions piece, has the same meaning as in 15 U.S. 6809. That's GLBA, Graham Leach Blithedale. Cross-reference to that. First, pretty sure. First party means a consumer-facing controller with which the consumer intends or expects to interact. First party advertising means processing by a first party of its own first party data for the purposes of advertising and marketing and is carried out A, through direct communications with.
Can I go back to derived data?
Yes.
And it's not a tautology, but it is. So the last phrase talks about or another source of information or data about a consumer's device. Is that a sort of a separate derivation, or I mean, does it all relate back to consumer's device, or can it be derived from by other means? I'm not making myself clear.
Yeah, you are.
No, I understand.
Oh,
I'm going to repeat it. My read of this is it's all about a consumer device. I could be wrong, but that's how I read it.
okay.
And if it's confusing, maybe it needs to be clarified. And if it's meant to be broader than that, then it's definitely to be clarified.
That-
Yeah.
There we
I
go.
will highlight that. Okay. Continue. First party advertising means processing by a first party of its own first party data for the purposes of advertising and marketing. It's carried out A, through direct communications with the consumer, such as direct mail, email, or text messages in a physical location operated by the first party, or through the display or presentation of an ad on the first party's own website, app, or its other online content. First party data means personal data collected directly from a consumer or by a first party in compliance with the subchapter, including based on a visit by the consumer to or use by the consumer of a website, a physical location, or an online service operated by the first party.
So that this definition, if I remember, has to do with exclusions for advertising.
Yes. From the
So it is in a sense limiting the exclusion by specifying it has to be first party.
advertising is a big part of this bill, so something to think about. So yes, I'm trying to remember if it's used elsewhere in the bill,
Yeah.
but yes, advertising is also contextual advertising is a big piece of this, and so we need to, think about when these terms are used, and the first party is meant to be the consumer has interacted, kind of like data brokers, right? If you interact with a data broker, they're third party, so these are first party entities that the consumer has interacted with in some way.
And yeah, I got it.
And again, I stand to be corrected. On when it comes to technical stuff, as far as how this works in the field, I'm not the best witness for that. Gender affirming healthcare services has the same meaning as in Vermont law. Gender affirming health data means any personal data concerning a past, present, or future effort made by a consumer to seek or a consumer's receipt of gender affirming healthcare services, including precise geolocation data that is used for determining a consumer's attempt to acquire or receive gender affirming healthcare services, efforts to research or obtain gender affirming healthcare services, and any gender affirming health data that is derived from non-health information. Genetic data should look familiar. I think it's word for word from our genetic privacy bill. It's any data, regardless of format, that results from the analysis of a biological sample of an individual or from another source, including DNA, RNA. I don't want to say these right now. Chromosomes, alleles, genomes, alterations or modifications to DNA or RNA, single nucleotide polymorphisms, SNPs.
Love that.
Epigenetic markers, uninterpreted data that results from analysis of the sample or other source, and any information extrapolated, derived, or inferred therefrom. Geofence means any technology that uses global positioning coordinates, cell tower connectivity, cellular data, radio frequency identification, wireless fidelity technology, or data, or any other form of location detection, or any combination of such coordinates, connectivity, data, identification, or other form of location detection to establish virtual boundary. Healthcare facility has the same meaning as in Vermont law. Pretty broad definition. HIPAA, it's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act 1996. Identified or identifiable individual means an individual who can be readily identified, directly or indirectly, including by reference to an identifier such as name, identification number, precise geolocation data, or an online identifier. Institution of higher education means any individual who, or school, board, association, limited liability company, or corporation that is licensed or accredited to offer one or more programs of higher learning leading to one or more degrees. Marketing measurement means measuring and reporting on marketing performance or media performance by the controller, including processing personal data for measurement and reporting of frequency, attribution, and performance, provided that such measurement data is not processed or transferred for any other purpose. Mental health facility means any healthcare facility in which at least 70% of the healthcare services provided in the facility are mental health services. A minor any consumer who is younger than 18 years of age. Neural data means information that is collected through biosensors and that could be processed to infer or predict mental states. A nonprofit means any organization that is qualified for tax exempt status under 501c3, 501c4, 501c6, or 501c12, or any corresponding internal references code of the US. Non-public personal information has the same meaning as in that case, 1915. Has the US code gotten that big, Josh? Yeah, this is going to be 15 USC 1609, which is Greenwich Bible. So 39, patient identifying information has the same meaning as in 42 CFR 211, healthcare records. Person And I'm gonna stop just for a second. Remember, person under Vermont law typically includes everything, including the state. Here it does not. It's limited to an individual, association, company, pretty much everything except for a state entity.
Oh, okay. Or
I
federal.
have a question. Rick, do we even need this since it's like a copy from Connecticut? Do we even need this since Vermont?
Person?
Yeah, in Vermont.
You know, you exempt a lot of governments, I think every government in the exemption, some maybe you don't.
I'm just curious
Yeah.
if we define it.
And
in
then,
a-
you know, person that is defined, including governments, it might be confusing.
Okay, okay, got it. Okay.
I'll think about that.
Okay.
It's the same definition that we have elsewhere.
Well, this was, yeah, Vermont defined it, so I was just curious if we actually like.
Well, this is different than how Vermont. defines it.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Meaning that if person is used without definition, it includes a bunch of.
Okay.
So if you don't define it, then it includes all those entities.
Okay.
41A, personal data means any information, including derived data and unique identifiers that is linked or reasonably linkable alone or in combination with other information to an identified or identifiable individual or to a device that identifies, is linked to, or is reasonably linkable to one or more identified or identifiable individuals in the household. Personal data does not include de-identified data or publicly available information. That last publicly available is also an important term. We'll get to here in a second. Precise geolocation data means information derived from technology that reveals the past or present physical location of a consumer or device that identifies or is or reasonably linkable to one or more consumers with precision and accuracy within a radius of 1,800 feet. It does not include the content of communications, data generated by or connected to an advanced utility metering structure system. A photograph or metadata associated with a photograph or video that cannot be linked to an individual, or data generated by equipment used by utility companies. Process or processing means any operation or set of operations performed, whether by manual or automated means, on personal data or on sets of personal data, such as the collection, use, storage, disclosure, analysis, deletion, modification, or otherwise handling of personal data. A processor is a person who processes personal data on behalf of a controller, another processor, or a federal, state, or government entity. Profiling means any form of automated processing performed on personal data to evaluate, analyze, or predict personal aspects, including an individual's economic situation, health, personal preferences, interests, reliability, behavior, location, movements, or identifying characteristics. Protected health information is the HIPAA meaning. Pseudonymous data.
Sorry, before you do that one, can we just when we go back to process or processing, you have such as, and it's not including, does such as and including have different meanings in Vermont law?
Yes,
Okay, so this is an exhaustive.
yes.
Thank you.
Let me clarify. So using including explicitly is not exhaustive.
Yes.
Such as does not have that same statutory construction in Vermont. So I think a court looking at this would say that's not exhaustive. But I guess one of my point is that it's not the statutory construction term. So including would inform the court that it's meant to be not exhaustive, such as is not as clear. So if you want it to be open-ended, I would suggest using including.
Okay, I wanted to understand
Yeah.
what was written. I didn't have an opinion, I don't have an opinion yet. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I can do more research on this, but I think
Kind of-
that it makes it more vague. And you don't want to be vague, you want to be clear.
Yep.
All right, so we are down to pseudonymous data.
I just wanted you to say that word a couple more times.
I want Nicholas to to say it.
Synonymous.
Pseudonymous.
Or
Wow.
pseudonymous.
Pseudonymous.
There's a D in there. At some point.
Where's the accent? Even.
At some point, somebody could say a D.
Pseudo, oh, I'm saying it wrong.
Pseudonymous.
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 What was I saying?
Synonymous.
You dropped it down.
No.
Pseudonymous.
Well, maybe the D silence.
Maybe it
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Maybe it's not a real word.
I've been rolling with it. It's been rolling with it. It's fine.
Pseudo, say it again.
Pseudonymous.
Sudan.
Pseudonymous.
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 Second syllable.
Pseudonymous.
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 Yeah, that's it. Pseudonymous.
Country.
It means personal data that cannot be attributed to a specific individual without the use of additional information, provided the additional information is kept separately and is subject to appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure that the personal data are not attributed to an identified or identifiable individual. I do want to briefly pause because, comparing that to the identified data, I'll just read that one. It means data that is not identified and cannot reasonably be used to infer information about or otherwise be linked to an identified or identifiable individual or a device linked to the individual. And then it says if the controller does the following. So again, both terms are here, they're different, similar but different, and then they're used in the similar sections in the bill. So maybe if it's confusing, we can talk about ways to maybe not make it less confusing. Yeah, okay. But maybe needs to be separate. 48A, publicly available information means information that is made available through federal, state, or local government records to the general public from widely distributed media, or information that a controller has a reasonable basis to believe that the consumer has lawfully made available to the general public. It does not include biometric data about a consumer without the consumer's knowledge, collected without consumer knowledge. 2, information that's collated and combined to create a consumer profile that is made available to a user of a publicly available website, either in exchange for a payment or for free of charge. I'd probably say at no cost there, but that's my. 3, information that is made available for sale. 4, an inference from 2 or 3 of that subdivision list. Any obscene visual depiction as defined in federal law. Personal data that is created through the combination of personal data with publicly available information. 7, the genetic data, unless otherwise made publicly available by the consumer to whom the information pertains. So maybe a stop here to talk about the genetic data privacy bill. Remember that bill is specific to direct to consumer genetic testing companies who may otherwise not be covered by this bill in certain ways. I don't think there's a conflict, but I'll double check and make sure we're not in conflict here. 8, information provided by a consumer on a website or online service made available to all members of the public for free or for a fee, where the consumer has maintained a reasonable expectation of privacy in the information, such as by restricting the information to a specific audience. For intimate images, authentic or computer generated, known to be non-consensual. Reproductive or sexual health care has the same meaning as reproductive healthcare services in Vermont law. Reproductive or sexual health data means any personal data concerning an effort made by a consumer to seek or a consumer's receipt of reproductive or sexual health care. Reproductive or sexual health facility means any healthcare facility in which at least 70% of the healthcare related services or products rendered or provided in the facility are reproductive or sexual health care. 52A, sale of personal data, means the exchange of a consumer's personal data by the controller to a third party for monetary or other valuable consideration. Sale of personal data does not include The disclosure of personal data to a processor that processes the personal data on behalf of the controller. The disclosure of data to a third party for purposes of providing a product or service requested by the consumer. The disclosure or transfer of personal data to an affiliate of the controller. The disclosure with the consumer's consent of personal data where the consumer directs the controller to disclose the personal data or intentionally uses the controller to interact with a third party. Or the disclosure or transfer of personal data to a third party as an asset that is part of a merger, acquisition, etc. So it's used in that subdivision. Again, control has the same meaning as we use an affiliate. Skip down to 53, sensitive data. Reveals a means personal data that A reveals a consumer's government issued identifier such as social security number, passport number, state ID number, state ID card, driver's license number that is not required by law to be publicly displayed. Reveals a consumer's racial or ethnic origin, national origin, citizenship or immigration status, religious or philosophical beliefs, mental or physical health condition, diagnosis, disability or treatment, status as pregnant, income level, or indebtedness, or union membership. Reveals a consumer's sexual orientation, sex life, sexuality, or status of transgender or non-binary. Reveals a consumer status as a victim of a crime. Is a consumer's tax return and account number, financial login, financial account, maybe number there, debit card number or credit card number in combination with any required security or access code, password, etc. Is consumer health data. So consumer health data is sensitive data. Is collected and analyzed concerning consumer health data that describes or reveals a past, present, or future mental or physical health condition, treatment, disability, diagnosis, including pregnancy, to the extent that personal data is used by the controller for a purpose other than to identify a specific consumer's physical or mental health condition or diagnosis.
Just clarity.
Yep.
And keeping us all awake, both. When we're talking about accounts and account numbers, and I think you're right that we do need the word number there.
Yeah, after financial account.
Yep. Somebody could say, you have an account at East Rise Credit Union, that's not sensitive data. But if you share more information than that, it is. Well,
The way
in the way it's written here.
Yeah, the way it's written, I think that would be something big. And maybe you want that to be, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the way it's written.
Every time I'm reading through this, I'm trying to process like how it works and what's the reasonable part, and I think that's reasonable, right? I think. But I don't, it depends on how it interplays with other things, probably.
Okay. So we'll continue on with sensitive data. Top page 17 is biometric or genetic data or information derived therefrom. Is collected from a consumer who a controller knew or should have known. Extra space there is a minor. Is precise geolocation data. Are keystrokes. Is driving behavior. Is neural data. Or are the online activities of a consumer over time and across devices, websites, online applications, and mobile applications that do not share common branding or data generated by profiling performance of data. Okay, targeted advertising. It means displaying or presenting an online advertisement to a consumer or to a device identified by a unique persistent identifier. If the ad is selected based in whole or part on known or predicted preferences, characteristics, behavior, or interests associated with the consumer or device identified by a unique persistent identifier. Targeted advertising includes displaying or presenting an online advertisement or product or service based on the previous interaction of a consumer or device identified by a unique persistent identifier with such product or service on a website or online service that does not share common branding with the website or online service displaying the or presenting the ad, and marketing measurement related to such advertisements. Targeted advertising does not include first-party ads or contextual ads.
Sorry, may I?
Yeah.
Before, so when we're talking about targeted advertising, we're talking about a specific device. Right, that you're about, what I'm trying to, question is about if I'm on a public server, public Wi-Fi. That's exempt, that's not targeted advertising.
Well, could be. How long you been on the computer? Like, are there cookies that are, like, have you been logged on for a while?
Can
And-
somebody, if I'm sitting in an online cafe.
Yeah.
Or with the, whatever you call those things, where you go to the cafe to use the Wi-Fi. And I'm on their public Wi-Fi. It appears that I could be targeted based on my location using that public Wi-Fi. That actually,
Sure, yes.
thank you.
In,
That's it.
in the field, maybe that works differently, but I think the definition would mean that you don't have to be on your own computer.
Yeah.
It could be a public computer. And still be.
On my device, but
Right.
using the public Wi-Fi. at a
Oh, the
certain
Wi-Fi, no,
location
Yeah, right.
would be exempt, wouldn't be part of targeted advertising.
Using Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi on your device,
Yeah, so somebody advertising based on that,
right?
I think it's not considered targeted advertising based on this definition. That's
Just based on, well, I don't know, because if we're talking about just the Wi-Fi alone, I don't think so, but. I need to think more about that. Using to me, what this is meant to be is when you're on your device, not really notwithstanding what network you're on.
Yeah, taking
Cell
that
network,
information from your device.
Yeah.
Not from, because there are
Right.
lots of other ways that
sure,
we are, engaging with the internet world.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm at Starbucks and I get a Starbucks ad because I'm on the public Wi-Fi, is that targeted?
No, it's contextual.
Right,
Sure.
that's my.
Yeah.
On a-
Because contextual includes a
Yes,
radius
let's
of up to 10 miles.
right, let's look at the definition. So a contextual ad. Not very based on the identity of the individual. It's based solely on the immediate content of web page or service within which it appears. Or a specific request of the consumer. Consumers' immediate presence in a geographic area. So Starbucks thing makes sense, but using a Wi-Fi, using some other network to me is not contextual, like that does not meet the contextual.
Okay, so it's just not covered.
Right.
That's
That's again,
so far.
that's a very good question, very technical, complicated question, but. Okay, let's go back to, we're almost at the end here. There are 20 words that start with Z, just so you all know. Thanks. Amy.
You're welcome.
So we are at third party, means a person, public authority, agency or body other than consumer, controller or processor, or an affiliate of the processor or the controller. A trade secret has the same meaning as in our own Title IX. A unique persistent identifier means a technologically created identifier to the extent that such identifier is reasonably linkable to a consumer or a device that identifies or is linked or reasonably linkable to one or more consumers, including device identifiers, internet profile addresses, cookies, beacons, pixel tags, mobile ad IDs, or similar technology, customer numbers. That seems not worded correctly. I'm gonna look at that. Maybe that's what you call it. That's actually look at the or similar technology, customer numbers, unique pseudonyms, user aliases, telephone numbers, or other forms of persistent or probabilistic identifiers that are linked or reasonably linkable to one or more consumers or devices. A unique persistent identifier does not include an identifier assigned by a controller for the sole purpose of giving effect to the exercise of affirmative consent or opt-out by a consumer with respect to the collection or processing of personal data, or otherwise limiting the collection or processing of the data. And 58, Victim Services Organization is a nonprofit that is established to provide services to victims or witnesses of child abuse, domestic violence, human trafficking, sexual assault, violent felony, or stalking. So is the definitions.
Question.
You go back to unique persistent identifier, sorry. Trouble taking that in. Can we talk about what that is and what it isn't?
Like what the definition is or how that phrase is used throughout the bill.
Giving effect to the exercise of affirmative consent, so if you. It's not an identifier. I'm just, for whatever reason, the words aren't making sense.
Well, I think that is meant to say if the consumer wants to opt out and the controller has to authenticate that consumer request, that's not an identifier. That's not a unique, that's not what it's meant to be used for. Maybe I'm wrong. But it, giving effect to the exercise of affirmative consent or opt out.
Okay.
I think maybe looking at how that term is used in the bill,
That's what I was thinking.
context probably makes a difference there, but.
I mean, the way I interpret it is that there's a unique persistent identifier no matter what. But if I'm opting out, you still need to know who I am. So that when I go to a site and I've chosen to opt out, you know not to collect my data.
I think it goes, yeah, and authentication, I think it goes to that too, but. Probably witnesses will talk about why that is important or not important.
Okay.
Yeah.
The questions for Rich? Okay. It's the walkthrough.
Yes.
Next Tuesday, we'll begin taking testimony on the bill. Rick, if we can pair that side by side,
But that's passed by the Senate.
would be helpful as well. I think that's it for this week. You have more? Do you have more? No more? You're all set?
Sure.
I have a separate list of questions.
You wanna go through them now?
No. Are they about windmills?
They might be. Okay,
Perhaps gardens.
so committee, we're back here at 9 o'clock Tuesday morning. Have a good weekend. Get rested up. Have a week or